Aloha, welcome to Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm Josh Green, your host, physician from the Big Island in the ER, and I work in the State Senate as well. Today I'm joined by two excellent individuals, both who were trained and educated here in the state of Hawaii with Micronesian origins and roots. I have these two expert gentlemen to come and talk to us about what is a very important topic to me. It's shared responsibility, Hawaii and Micronesia. I think the scope of this challenge that we have had in our relationship with the people from Micronesia has been poorly understood. And I wanted to bring people who really knew from their life experiences what the full scope of this relationship is. So today I'm happy to be joined by, first, Dr. Sheldon Riklon, who's an MD, born and raised in the Marshall Islands, one of only two individuals ever to get their medical degree and residency here in the United States, who has a lot of expertise on Micronesian or COFA citizenship issues. He's a health disparities expert. He's an associate professor, of course, at JABSOM, so we're very happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. And then, in addition, I have Jojo Peter, who's getting his doctorate at Manoa, has 2 master's degrees from Chuck. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm from Chuk.
Chuk, forgive me.
Yes.
I'm a Jew from Pittsburgh, so I still have some issues here on all language issues. Also, you are a leader at the COFA Community Action Network. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I wanted to have a very open discussion today with you about the complex nature of this relationship that Hawaii has with Micronesia. But you're the expert, so if I could first turn it over to you. If you could give our viewers just a little bit of an overview of what Micronesia is. What does it mean in its relationship at the most basic level before we dig in with Hawaii? Could I start with you, Doc?
Sure. And thank you again for the invitation to come to your show. Definitely it's a pleasure and honor and privilege to be here.
Thank you.
I think, if you think about Micronesia and the United States, one of the first things that come into mind is the Compact of Free Association, which for short, a lot of people here in the state of Hawaii call it the COFA.
Okay.
Compact of Free Association, Compact Treaty. And, we have a rich history with the United States as friends, as mentors, where the U.S. basically took over control of the area in the Second World War from the Japanese at that time. And since that time, we've developed a lot of long-lasting relationship with that. And when the U.S. took over, actually, that was a very strategic area for them to possess during that time, where basically they got control over the land, sea, water, and air, basically. And, we as, Micronesians, basically we gave that to the United States at that time. And we've developed a relationship with them for a long time.
Was it a contentious time? But this is, of course, predates, we're all younger individuals, but it seems to me that geopolitically that was very, very important to the United States.
Absolutely.
What was the nature of the transaction at the time? Was it a forceful takeover? Was it a kind of a mutual relationship that developed? How did that play out?
Actually, it was more friendly than anything. It was a very mutual relationship where, we gave our land, the air, sea, in exchange for us to live kind of like U.S. citizens, basically like U.S. nationals, where we can also travel and immigrate and come to the United States, without a visa. We don't need a green card when we actually come and work here. And we were given the opportunity to send our kids or come and actually seek education and healthcare as well. Which, if you're a member of any family or any nation, that's those are key things that you want to have for you to provide for your family members.
And I had no idea that the history went that far back, so it's very helpful. And obviously this has had an impact on both of you, a medical degree, many advanced degrees, Jojo. Do you also have family members that have come and trained in Hawaii?
Yeah, I think if you look at that history, like Dr. Sheldon Riklon said, after World War II,
yes,
the United States saw the strategic value in that region. And if you look at the way World War II ended, and it's really the beginning of the nuclear race.
Yes.
The plane that dropped those 2 bombs,
yes,
that ended the war in the Pacific on Hiroshima, then Nagasaki 3 days later. That plane took off from the Mariana Islands.
Wow.
And then, all of the heavy battles, like battles of Beliliu and Palau, Battle of Saipan, Druk Lagoon or Chuk Lagoon, was a major, major Japanese fortification, and it took a while and in Kwajalein and in the Marshall Islands, all of that region were sites of heavy World War II battles. So the United States really saw the strategic value in those places. So when it came to the United Nations programs of the trusteeship program,
yes,
United Nations started handing out all those 11 trusteeship. That trusteeship that the United States got with the Micronesian region was the only one that has a strategic undertone to it. Mm-hmm. The other trust territories, Papua New Guinea, American Samoa, and all of them, it's just a matter of Great Britain or whoever was holding that trusteeship sponsorship to get them on track politically, and that's kind of like the spirit of this thing.
Right.
However, with the U.S., given the strategic value of this and what they realized, and beginning the Cold War, nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands, CIA training in the Northern Marianas, and then just cordoning off that whole region from outsiders. Even Americans couldn't go there.
Wow.
So then you have Guam, who just to this day still has two of the bigger U.S. military bases in the Pacific.
Yes.
So the strategic location and the strategic value of that place, sort of like, it took about 13 years to negotiate the Compact of Free Association. And there were some elements of the Micronesian government at that time, among the Micronesians, although they were educated here in Hawaii, really wanted outright independence, but that was not going to be an issue. So what you see with the Compact is really a compromise between independent, which was kind of like the movement of the day in the 60s, everybody wanted to be, these are all the
right.
time when neocolonialism set in it, so everybody has to be independent, but at the same time, United States interests militarily.
Right.
So a lot of people look at the Compact as sort of this liberating thing, and but really, if you really look at it, the Compact is really that shared responsibility for both what the Americans and the United States see as its military interests, and what the Micronesian want out of independence. So
it really is fascinating. So I'm so glad that you were able to recommend this topic and the shared responsibility concept to us, because I think a lot of people out there who don't have, myself included, a full breadth of understanding of the history, they see only a point in time. They might see, for instance, if I may play devil's advocate, people might say, well, there's a significant amount of resources that the state of Hawaii contributes to the combined health care of people who are from Micronesia. But when you take a look at things in the context that you've just presented, we're talking about decades long of a relationship where the United States has had a very, very significant benefit by having geopolitically that center of activity for CIA activities, for nuclear testing. And so I think people need to see the relationship in a broader context, for one, and then in time during our show today, I think we'll be able to dig into the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day healthcare and our needs of a shared people, because this is a society that does want to integrate and to be, I think, caring for all. But sometimes we don't feel that, I think, when we just read media reports. So tell me again, when did the compact get first signed or put into place?
For the Marshall Islands, and I believe for the FSM was also in 1986.
Okay.
That's when the first compact actually was signed for both. And I think eventually later on, then Palau signed on, I think probably 3 years later, I believe,
94, I think somewhere
94.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're actually now in the second stage of the second compact as amended. So I think they've already signed for the Marshall Islands and FSM, and not too sure about Palau. I think they're still negotiating, or they're done with that too.
These must be large negotiations, obviously, because we put a lot of resources out there, but we depend on the Marshall Islands for a full partnership. I've never been there. What is it like? What kind of presence does one feel from mainland United States or naval forces or whatnot in Micronesia? If you're a citizen there, do you see mainland Americans walking around all the time? How is it that you experience that?
Chuuk is a bit different from the Marshall Islands, and I can let Jojo talk about Chuuk. But the Marshall Islands, I mean, it's very friendly.
Yes.
You see Americans, you see British, you see Japanese, Koreans, Chinese, Taiwanese, Papua New Guineans, Nepalese. I mean, all different ethnicities on the island, and everybody's very friendly. Everybody feels like they're welcome to the islands, and that's basically how we are. Our culture is all about helping each other, being like a part of a family. Our definition of a family basically is an extended family, where it's not just a nuclear, just mom and pops, but it's actually everybody that's around you. So we kind of work together and take care of each other that way. The islands, the Marshall Islands, they're very flat islands. They're all atolls and islands. We don't have any mountains like Jojo and Chuuk does, so we're very dependent on the rain in terms of water. Sometimes we have some wells, but it's a little bit brackish water.
Yes.
And we're very dependent on the ocean, for our fish and for anything that you can get out of the ocean in terms of feeding ourselves. There's a coral island, so it's not too many things can grow there, but we've been trying to grow things. But there's a lot of breadfruit trees and coconut trees and taro and yams, and so we like, those are our island foods, if you call it that.
And how many people come from the Marshall Islands and live somewhere in in America? Just to give people an idea,
Sure.
What's the core population of the Marshall Islands, Chuuk, and so on? How many people live there in general?
I think for the Marshall Islands, estimated right now, population for total Marshall Islands is basically 65,000.
Okay.
But not everybody is in the islands. There's actually been a large migration out of the islands, seeking health and education and better job opportunities for a lot of the folks in the islands.
Mm-hmm.
Large, of course, with Hawaii being the closest, when we fly out of the islands, then you have a large influx of Marshallese and other Micronesians
Right.
come here to Hawaii as well as to Guam. But there's also pockets of Micronesians on the mainland as well.
Can that same thing be said from Chuuk?
Well, yeah, Chuuk is part of a four-state nation called the Federated States of Micronesia.
Yes.
So the three nations that are in different compacts, three different compact agreements with the U.S. are Republic of the Marshall Islands, Republic of Palau, and then you have this nation made up of four island group called Federated States of Micronesia.
Okay.
And Chuuk has the biggest population there, about like almost 50%, if not 50% of that FSM nation.
Yes.
Chuuk has a combination of both high island volcanic in a lagoon, and then you have the outer islands, which are atolls.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of those things I also want to mention about this, because it's kind of related to the issue of migration and why people move, is the recent effect of sea level and global warming.
Yes.
And if you see YouTube videos, I think our friend, poet from the Marshall Island, Kathy Jegnil Gidgener, her latest poem was actually on CNN, and CNN picked it up, and she talks about 2 degrees, because that's kind of the fight globally, internationally, where we try to, 2 degrees is sort of the goal. But 2 degrees in the Marshall Islands is already seen major flooding.
Okay.
And major disturbing weather patterns that basically have wreaked havoc in the islands. And for example, our atolls, which are dependent on taro root crops as the primary food source, and that gets now it's severely more than regular inundation of salt water into those taro fields, and so therefore the traditional crop is basically wiped out. Now you're dependent on food being brought in from outside. Breadfruit is also the other food crop, but it's seasonal.
Yes.
And taro is like use whatever. It's about months after you plant it, and then you can eat it. But those are now severely challenged. People's homes are severely challenged. So when you talk about people moving, you need to really understand there are economical factors, there are health factors or socio-economic factors,
Right.
but there are also environmental factors, and these are real issues. We talk about it, but it's hard to kind of personalize it.
Yes.
But for many of us in the islands, these are real issues.
And it's
You know.
creating an environment where people are going to be even more dependent on this relationship.
Right. So you
Yeah.
move people from their home because there's, it's not safe for one thing.
Yes.
And it's not producing the life-giving, capacity that is needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to move. For example, you look at environmental factor and health factors. Two very strong, powerful factors behind people moving.
Right.
And then they move to different places, and it's equally powerful. So you move here, you move to a place where you're trying to mitigate all of your needs, but people just don't understand that, and they think you're just blindly coming here to annoy people, really, because that's kind of the reaction you get.
Yes. Yeah.
So and they say, well, you're better off at home. Oh, no. There's something real going on here, and that's something that has to. So for us, we have shared with the United States, not just with our islands and air and all of that stuff, but through this compact, we allow that to happen. A huge percentage of our young men and women, perhaps the highest ethnic group,
Yes.
In the United States, have joined the military service, have sort of taken on that, with a sense of commitment and, of course, empowerment.
Right.
Then we come here also, and we pay taxes. I mean, we're not exempt, in spite of what people may think or want to say. We are not. There's no special treatment for Micronesians
Yes.
in Hawaii. That sort of like gives them an unfair advantage over any other group. However, because of this racist rhetoric and stereotypes, the table is actually tilted against us, because we're trying to apply for housing, and people say, for apartment, they said, on the moment they see that, oh yeah, you're a Chukis, I'm sorry, how many people are going to be living here?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's a mix of racism,
Exactly.
probably.
Yeah.
I think only because we have a short break. If I may, I'll interrupt you here, and we'll kind of dive right in right at this point here after our break.
Okay.
Sound okay?
Sounds good.
I'm Josh Green, Healthcare in Hawaii, having an important dialogue today about the shared responsibility between Hawaii and the Marshall Islands. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Keith.
My name's Keith Bettinger.
I knew that.
And I'm the host of ThinkTech Asia.
I knew that too.
Here on ThinkTech.
Fabulous. You got a great show going, Keith.
Thank you very much. And for our viewers out there that are interested in ThinkTech Asia, it airs every Tuesday from 4 to 4:45, and it can be accessed online at thinktech.com.
Yeah, so what kind of guests you like?
Well, we have a number of guests from academia, from practitioners of international affairs. Sometimes we have military officials. Sometimes we have public officials on the show. And our goal, we try to talk about current issues in South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Central Asia, all throughout the Asian realm, in more depth than you would find in traditional mainstream
That's the
media.
difference, isn't it?
Exactly.
That you're reaching out beyond what ordinary news media would do.
Right.
And that's why we like you so much.
We're trying to provide a thinking person's perspective, an intelligent perspective on what's going on, and we're both sides of the story, or even when there's more than two sides, we try to cover every angle. And I think that's one of the big benefits that we provide here at ThinkTech, is it's a really innovative source of educational programming for the people of Hawaii.
You're great, Keith. You are a great host. You got a great show going on. I watch it every week.
Thanks very much.
Why don't
Jay.
you guys watch it every week too, okay?
4:45 to 4 to 4:45 every Tuesday.
Okay. Aloha. Welcome back to Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm your host, Josh Green, a member of the State Senate, the Health Committee, Chair Emeritus, and now also an ER physician, of course, on the Big Island. Today we're having an important dialogue about the shared responsibility between the state of Hawaii and Micronesia. There have been a lot of misconceptions about this relationship that I wanted to begin to clear up, so I'm lucky enough to have two experts here today. First, we have Jojo Peter, a couple master's degrees, leader of the Kofa community here, very articulate, and really been educating me quite a lot about this relationship. And then also a professor from JABSOM, Dr. Sheldon Riklon, He's got his MD, born and raised in the Marshall Islands, associate professor, like I said, did his bachelor's over at Hilo. Two of probably the individuals that can best set people straight. There are a lot of, I guess what I'm gathering, urban myth and misconceptions about the relationship. In our first segment, first 15 or 20 minutes, it was very clear to me that the breadth of this relationship is much larger than people understand. Going back to World War II, it was actually kind of a stunning moment when, Jojo, when you said, yes, the missions that were launched to end World War II were launched from areas within the region, and that geopolitical advantage that the United States had is huge. And then to discuss also the nature of change in the islands and how people aren't just coming here simply because there is a relationship which is really meant to be fair for both communities, but also people are suffering now in Micronesia.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the we need to also point out that the way the United States interest manifested in the islands, primarily about strategic and military values, really affected the way the U.S. was supposed to, undertake its responsibility under the UN trusteeship. And it was sort of contradictory because the United Nations sort of entrusted the islands to the U.S. for the purpose of, and it's in the trusteeship agreement that your responsibility is to develop the islands educationally, economically, health-wise, socially, so that with the expressed purpose of independence.
Okay.
So that one day these islands will be independent. And in order for them to be independent, these things have to be in place.
Right.
Now, with the U.S. military values and all of that, that's contradictory to, for one thing, they couldn't let people into the area.
Right.
So how can you have economic development when you can't even let people, get into the area to do some economic development or some meaningful economic development?
Because I think we would all agree that the nature of the U.S. presence there is so significant with nuclear testing, having major battleships there. I mean, it seems almost unrealistic.
And the reason why they held those nuclear testing in Bikini and Wajak and Rongelap in the Marshall Islands because they're so far away from the U.S. mainland.
Yeah.
And it's sort of out of sight.
Yes.
And they kept it out of sight because if they had they hold those nuclear testing in the backyard of the average Americans, you'll never hear the end of it, or it will not happen.
Yeah, it's not the kind of thing that we do off of the coast of California routinely.
No.
And
But my point in all of this is in this long relationship to today, and people, are like, well, but the point, my point in this is, even if we want to, we can never get the United States out of it.
so yes, so this is a relationship in perpetuity now, and let's shift to that.
Right.
Now that we have this relationship, and I think we should be responsible and embrace it at this point because it goes so far back. It's meant so much to the United States, and now it means a great deal, of course, to the individuals that live in the region with global warming, with changes in the environment, and the commitment that's been made.
Right.
How would you say, Doctor, that we can actually do our part to help provide good health care? You're a healthcare expert, obviously, on the health conditions of the Micronesian people. But there are big disparities in health. I'm a family doctor. I don't know if you're an internist or a family physician.
Family physician as well.
So we have that shared experience, and we see that. I've had many people on our program before, Neil Palafox and others from JABSOM, talk about the gigantic health disparities. Usually, a huge part is socioeconomic, and then a lot of it is ethnic as well. How do we provide the right care, equality, to the people that come from Micronesia, from Chuk, from wherever? What's your experience?
It's been mixed. And I think, part of it is, you need to treat the COFA citizens and the Micronesian citizens first with open arms.
Yes.
Not racially.
Yes.
Okay. We come from a place where resources are very limited. So the morbidity and mortality that we experience back on the islands are very high in different kind of things. from your non-communicable diseases to your communicable disease as well. So we don't have any dialysis per se in a lot of the islands over there. So if somebody has renal failure, that's basically it. If you're in the islands, then
you will die unless you come here.
Basically, you're expected to die unless you go somewhere else.
Right.
Same thing with cancer. And again, cancer, because if you think about it, with the military program, with the U.S. nuclear weapons testing program in the islands, then there's a direct relationship in that as well.
Yes.
There's also an indirect relationship with the nuclear weapons testing program where if a place is, contaminated radioactively, then you really cannot plant your own kind of foods.
Yes.
That, the way you've been displaced from the islands because your island that you lived on basically now is a large crater in the ocean. So there's a relationship where it affects your health in terms of what kind of activities you can do. The land is very important to us. So, also the kind of foods, because before we used to eat all the island foods like I had mentioned earlier, but now we're more dependent on the imported foods. And a lot of the imported foods have high salt content, high cholesterol content.
Processed food that's causing chronic disease, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, all those things, come with a price. So, when we move from the islands, we already have the heavy disease burdens. We have a lot of high rates of diabetes, high rates of hypertension.
Yes.
Cancer of various types. I mean, you name it, from your lung cancer, your bladder cancer, your breast cancers, skin cancers, blood cancers, I mean, you name it.
Is this because of the nuclear exposure and the fallout? What's the epidemiology been like on that?
Yeah, so initially when, right in the immediate time where they actually were doing the nuclear weapon testing program, there was a lot of high rates of cancer at that point. Most of it was thyroid cancers, but there were also some blood cancers, leukemia and lymphomas, as well as there was a lot of stillbirths in the women that were, of the kids that were born there, so there's a high rate of death from there.
Yes.
So it's been, although it's been kind of calming down, it's still kind of existent. Right. I mean, the rate of cancer in the islands is, higher than most other places, including the United States. So when we come out of the islands to go seek health care,
yes,
we got all those things that we need to kind of take care of. So trying to do primary care as well as take care of the tertiary needs, is quite challenging for primary care physicians in the islands or in the United States too. But if you understand the relationship and the history of it, then I think, that's a big step in the right direction.
Well, it does. I mean, it bespeaks of a moral imperative, frankly.
Absolutely.
I think that if anyone's watching our program today and hadn't understood the breadth of this relationship in time, the nature of the benefit to the United States, and then finally, on top of that, the ultimate sacrifice, which for those who have had children or an extended family for that matter, and have watched them have a higher risk of losing a child to a lost pregnancy, having leukemia, having thyroid cancer, while at the same time not being able to get care, it's really something I would say we have to be honor bound as partners, as societal partners, to make sure that people get their care. It's hard enough to get care no matter who you are in a remote place like Hawaii, where many times people in my program have talked about the healthcare shortage and how we don't have enough people to take care of Medicare or those who are on Medicaid. But in this particular case, it really does seem like people need to come to a much better understanding that the people, the individuals, the citizens from this set of islands deserve to have us open our arms and offer as much possible care as exists. Because I can't imagine a family member that you might have that ended up with, and I saw some very advanced disease, by the way. When I worked on Big Island in Kau, a lot of individuals came from Micronesia that I took care of, and wonderful people, but they had some very advanced metabolic disorders and incredible gout and lymphomas that I was shocked by. So how anyone could disparage someone who has been exposed to those challenges and not get full services is pretty much beyond me. But tell me more about that. So now we have an open relationship. People can come from Micronesia, from the Compact Free States, to Hawaii. They can, I guess, go to mainland as well.
That's correct.
But obviously it's easier to come to Hawaii at least first. Maybe you have relationships and other family members here if you're from the States. You land in Hawaii. what do you first experience as far as healthcare goes? What's it like for someone?
It varies, but you know, I think, you know, it all depends on, you know, what they're coming to Hawaii for us, you know, in the first place too. You know, if you're moving to Hawaii because you need to seek care,
yes,
then you're already kind of sick.
Okay.
You come in and you gotta access the healthcare system, which, you know, is very different from the healthcare system back in the islands, which is very simple, but it's very resource limited.
Yes.
When it comes to try to access the healthcare system in Hawaii or any other, you know, mainland states, it's not that easy. It's quite complicated. So even trying to get insurance, we've gone through this flux of insurance coverage for us, you know, for COFA citizens. You know, we've gone from being on the Quest program to being on the Basic Health Hawaii plan, now being on the Health Connector plans, now unknown plan at this point.
Yes.
In the beginning, I think, you know, when in 1996, there was this called the PWRA law, P-W-R-A law that was enacted in Congress, where it basically made it so COFA citizens were not eligible for Medicaid anymore at that point. We were very fortunate because in the state of Hawaii, it actually said, you know, well, you know, regardless of that, you know, the state is still going to cover the citizens of the COFA states
yes,
under the Quest program.
Right.
So that's how it had happened until back in 2009, under the Lingle administration, when they actually wanted to take everybody of the COFA migrants, all the COFA citizens on Quest, take them off and put them on what's called the Basic Health Hawaii plan. It sounds basic, but, you know, and it was, the thought is that it's good because, you know, you got some insurance, but really it was very limited in terms of what you can access, the kind of health care that you can get.
If I'm not mistaken, there were some tragic flaws in that plan. If I recall, at least in its first incarnation, it didn't include dialysis.
That's
It didn't
correct.
include therapy for
That is
chemotherapy,
correct.
which was essentially a death sentence. And I remember certain things you know, you just don't become aware of. Other things leap out. And that was just, would have been catastrophic. I don't even know how that was conceived.
Right.
I guess that got resolved somewhat quickly, but still, it sounds to me, the story that you're telling me before we go to our next break, Dr. Riklon, is that in spite of the relationship and the compact between our two parties, still individuals are being treated like second-class citizens. They're being bounced from one plan to another, when really it appears to me that after the United States had benefited from the geopolitical position in the Pacific, that there should be a seamless and unquestioned relationship for resources. It's really not that many people when we really look at it either. And that doesn't necessarily happen. Is that a fair statement?
That is a very fair statement. It doesn't necessarily happen that way, unfortunately.
Okay.
At least fair access to welfare program.
Okay. Let's pick that up after our second break. This is Josh Green, Healthcare in Hawaii. Today we're speaking about a shared responsibility between the state of Hawaii and Micronesia.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at ThinkTech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Kili'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week, we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Aloha, welcome back to Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm your host, Senator Josh Green, ER physician on the Big Island. Today, I'm really excited to be having a dialogue between two experts on Micronesia. These are individuals who live here in Hawaii have advanced degrees. I'm joined by Jojo Peter and Dr. Sheldon Riklon. He's got a medical degree and provides expert care for people who are either living in Hawaii or have come from Micronesia in any way, shape, or form. So the title of our show today is Shared Responsibility. In a nutshell, if people haven't seen our first two segments, we have a very detailed and critical relationship between Micronesia and the United States, one that has benefited the United States geopolitically, but now we have many individuals who, by right, by law, are entitled to resources, they need resources, but this is a shared responsibility and a shared relationship. What should it look like so that people can respect this relationship? What does it need to look like going forward?
Well, I see this, first of all, we need to reframe, this whole thing about those COFA people. I think if you really look at the Compact of Free Association,
yes,
and what it entails for both parties, and what both parties have put on the table for this, in order for this relationship to happen.
yes,
It is a compact of free association. It's a shared responsibility. In a way, all of us are COFA citizens.
yes,
Americans are COFA citizens too because of this treaty. We Micronesians are COFA citizens too because we're in this treaty. So in order for us to have an equal shared responsibility with this, I think we need, for one thing, we need to facilitate equitable access. Equitable access to equitable and fair access to health, for one thing. Let's talk about health because we've been talking about health.
right.
Stop moving people around.
Yeah.
Like
From one health plan
From
to
one health plan
another,
to another.
to one provider.
And they do so sheerly because, or purely on the fact that they are COFA citizens.
Okay.
That's the only reason they move them, because there's no other reason. They pay like everybody else.
Yes.
They use all of the, resources just like everybody else. But the fact that they are COFA citizens, and with their implication of this impact cost, and saying, and sometimes they say, they are not our responsibility. You tend to feel like, as Micronesian, you feel like your worth is nothing, because then you're sort of like a ward of somebody.
Yes.
When you are actively contributing as an equal, we're working very hard, we're doing our best, and you talk about our responsibility and our contribution to Hawaii. And here's something that they sort of always conveniently left out. The cultural contribution that has, been a long history and heritage of Micronesians and Hawaiians for the past, I don't know how many decades. And the latest one, of course, with the Maupiailuk. And the patience that man took in sharing the knowledge to Native Hawaiians so that they would find themselves.
Yes.
And now, ironically, we're talking about healthcare for Micronesians, even trying to fight for the basic welfare, that everybody is entitled to. And this rich history is now being taken all over the world. It's a global voyage now.
Yes.
It's a global voyage. We're sharing aloha all over the world, but we still have to share the aloha with the Micronesians here in Hawaii.
It's implicitly racist almost, it would seem, that we separate a people. And I've been through this with my people decades ago, also interestingly in World War II. I'm Jewish, and my grandparents rather came from Europe. But I think that what you're saying is we should be partners and be treated totally as equals, that we shouldn't be setting aside any specific program for one ethnicity or another,
Right.
one nation or another.
It totally defeats the purpose of what America is about.
Right.
Discriminating and segregating and all of these things. And you would think with a nation like the United States,
Right.
With its history of immigration, or a state like Hawaii,
Yes.
with its rich history of immigration and diversity,
Yes.
you would think that we would have mastered, how to integrate people.
Yes.
But with internment camp for the Japanese American and all of the other, ethnic groups that have come to the shore of, the country through Hawaii, it just a little bit baffling that we haven't really figured out, how to do this. I think there's a lot of lessons to learn.
I think that people will hopefully learn some of these lessons from our conversation today, and it doubtless will require follow-up because I think there's a lot more to learn. Now, Dr. Riklon, you're a physician,
Yes.
Trained, born and raised in Micronesia, trained here.
Yes.
You now take care of a lot of people. Would you echo Jojo's comments about having equity and equality? Is that what your vision would be?
Absolutely. So coming and training here, and basically now working here, as a primary care provider, physician.
Yes.
I also work at the medical school, so I also teach medical students as well.
Right.
I also help and train family practice residents at the residency program.
Yeah.
I think one of the key reasons, or something that we need to make sure that people understand is, which is contrary to popular belief, is actually Micronesians do have a positive impact contributions to the state of Hawaii and the nation as a whole. We do work. A lot of us work. We do pay state taxes. We do pay federal taxes. A lot of our children, actually, they sign up for the U.S. military, and according to one of the reports in the past, we got the highest per capita rates of enlisted men and women in the U.S. military compared to any United States. And so our kids enroll because they believe in the United States. They believe in this shared responsibility. They believe that they are part of the United States. So they do enroll in the military. They go and contribute. They do get injured. They also die as well. So it really makes no sense why, to a lot of us, why is it that we're seen differently from everybody else in the nation? But we're already kind of doing our part. Unlike most people think that we don't do anything, that we're just sitting there and asking for handouts, but we really don't. And unfortunately, we still have the racial discrimination, issues that we still deal with on a regular basis. And our hope is that, at least people would understand where we come from, understand our history, our culture, that we actually make up the state of Hawaii also in how the melting pot, as people talk about it all the time.
Yeah, I'm really so happy to hear you say that, because I think that one thing that is happening is, well, first of all, this is probably the generation where there can best be integration. I'm married to a woman who has Hawaiian blood and Japanese blood, and may very well happen that one of my children marry someone who has blood from Micronesia, because we are a true melting pot. So this generation, combined with the fact that the level of service in our military and in integrated ways in our government is quite profound. So this generation should definitely be an opportunity to move that direction. But also, this is just one person's perspective, but I'm seeing this from the perspective of a senator. I think that Hawaii really is searching for its identity right now. You see issues like Mauna Kea and a tremendous amount of strain, emotional and psychological strain about how to deal with that question, the sacred mountain, and Western industry. You're seeing that on Maui, where people are trying to decide what to do culturally with sugarcane burning. You're seeing it with genetic modified organisms and people saying we do or don't want them in society. And Hawaii is trying to come to terms with its identity. And we have large numbers of people from other countries, in this case from a region that has committed itself to the United States and now is integrated really completely in a partnership, a compact, as it's said. So this seems to be the generation, but I'm really pleased to be able to have someone who's a physician, who has advanced degrees, to be able to show that some of the preconceived notions about Micronesia are just, they're fantasies in some ways. We only have another minute or two. A couple final words that you might offer people. What would you like people to really come away thinking about the people from where you grew up and how our relationship is in Hawaii? Jojo?
I think open mind. We need to, always treat each other with open mind.
In an integrated community, because we're all in these small communities, in the schools and in the health centers and in government. Doc?
Same thing, ask us, let us help. We are members of this community and we want to do what we can.
Okay, well, I think this is a good partnership going forward, so thank you for joining me today on the show.
Thank you.
Great to meet you, Jojo.
Thank you.
This is Josh Green, your host at Healthcare in Hawaii. Today we talked about the shared responsibility between Hawaii and Micronesia. Thanks for joining us.